Good evening, all. This is Jack from Charting the Markets, and this is the Bigger Picture webinar for the evening of Sunday, the 30th of March. My disclaimer, I do this for educational purposes only. I'm here to share my technical analysis with you. I hope you can take some of what I'm doing and learn from it, transfer it to your own charts. I'm not here to issue trading signals. Right. Okay, I hope you all saw me call the high on Wednesday morning in the pre-market video, and it delivered. And I did a post that day, and I drew a possible path for it to take on the rest of the week, and that was actually looking pretty good, because what I was thinking was it might go back and test the high, set up a really nice double top, and then head down to retest the low. But the inflation numbers were bad, the market was very heavy, and it fell right through it. So lovely setup, nice looking positive divergence. You can see the weak 60-minute buy signal here. We had 15-minute buy signals as well on SPX, and they all fell pretty much. So we've broken down directly, and we're heading directly down to the target here, which signals about 55-60 area on ES, and we're almost there. And I think we'll likely reach that tomorrow in all probability, and we might set up some positive divergence. This brings us to the next stage of the game. Now, we have potential double bottoms forming here. We'll be looking at those today. I'm not really expecting those to deliver, but given that we might see obviously delays on tariffs and so on, then we might. By the way, I did promise that I'd be getting a bigger picture post out on the impact of tariffs. I've actually split that into two posts. The first one, which is the rationale for why tariffs could cause a market crash. I've almost finished, but I'm planning to get them both out tomorrow, because they're kind of attached to the hip. And I'll do one on the bigger picture, and I'll do one on the chart in the market Substack, referring back to the other one as the rationale for anyone who wants to read a lot of economics, but basically explaining why this could cause a major problem over the remainder of the year. So, but getting down to this is another inflection point. We've got targets below. We've got a target down here at about the 5,500 area, and really I'm expecting that to get made, but we do have an opportunity to form some double bottoms here, possibly even get down to this target and then still have a double bottom, and then potentially see a large rally. So I'm going to be watching that with great interest this week. Tune into the pre-market videos, where I'll be doing updates every day, but obviously tomorrow's video, it'll have the overnight action, but mainly I'll be talking about that here. NQ, again, failed back towards the low. We've already made the low on retest the low on NQ. We haven't got that far quite on on the Qs, and I'm expecting that to deliver tomorrow morning. We will see. No current positive divergence, but obviously looking at the low sold short term. RTY, no current positive divergence either. Again, heading down to the target, which here is a smidgen above 2,000, and YM on the way back to that target too. So we've got nice bear flags. I called the likely highs of the bear flags on Wednesday morning, and off we went, and we're going to reach that. We didn't do it the way that I drew the arrows and I was saying was my preferred option, and I think we might have had the it was looking pretty good setting up for it, but if it hadn't been for the inflation numbers on Friday, I think that might have actually had a decent shot. But we had the inflation numbers on Friday, and it went the other way. All right, now just to mention something, just before we get on to the RTH charts. Tomorrow is a bearish leaning day. It is the last day of the quarter. It always leans somewhat bearish, not a lot bearish. I mean, it's basically 42.9 and green closes, tends to be about even on NASDAQ. But we tend to be down tomorrow and up the next 2 days, both of which are pretty bullish. And April tends to be a pretty bullish month. I went through this on the pre-market webinar on I think Thursday or Friday night last week. But if you look at, there's not a single bearish leaning day in I think potentially the whole of April. Yeah, there is one, the last day of April, the 30th. But until then, we've got no bearish leaning days, and we've got bullish leaning days on the 1st, the 2nd, the 4th, the 8th, the 10th, the 14th, the 15th, the 16th, the 22nd, the 23rd, and the 29th. That's a lot of bullish leaning days. April does tend to be a pretty good month. Obviously, the traditionally bearish time of the year happens in May, and I am I am really wondering about, at the moment, Liberation Day, as Trump is putting it, is scheduled for April 2nd. Personally, I think it's going to be a disaster. And to be honest, he's got an increasing amount of worries on his plate at the moment. I think he might delay it. I don't think he's going to delay it for a very long time if he does do it, but it might be enough time to get a good rally. So I am taking the possibility that we're forming double bottoms here seriously. So we shall see. All right, DAX. I think this is a double top on DAX, and I think it's going to break down. I haven't marked in the areas yet, but I'm thinking that's got a very, very good shot. We don't have as clear a setup on ESTX. We don't really have a clear setup at all on ESTX, but obviously we're making lower highs and lower lows and lower highs. So I'm reckoning this will go lower into another lower low. Could this be an overall bull flag forming? Potentially. And we've got a weak 60-minute buy signal fixed, and we've got one of those on DAX as well, but they're not really an awful lot to be hanging out on. So I'm keeping an open mind on those, but we had a whole load of actual buy signals on Friday morning on the US indices, and actually they pretty much all failed. So we will see how that develops. Okay, let's have a look at the RTH charts now. Okay, let's have a look at the 15-minute charts first, because they're the ones that I was drawing the path on. I've drawn another path on now. This is bear flag is now clearly. I had a nice looking potential IHS forming an inflection point here. We didn't do it, but we do have the possibility that we're going to form a double bottom here, and I'm, given certainly what we've seen so far this year, I'm most definitely not ruling out the possibility that April 2nd will be delayed or modified in some way. And I have to say, Trump is making some promising noises towards the Canadians, making a deal there. I am wondering if he's going to shift a bit, and if he does, then potentially we've got a rally which could take us up potentially back to the highs. That could set up a really nice double top, but it would fail all the current signals we've got, which I'll be coming through to. On the Qs, again, making expecting a retest the low, wondering if that might be a double bottom as well. Dire, looking for a retest of the low, wondering if that might be a double bottom as well. And on IWM, thinking the same. NQ and the Qs are the closest to the lows. SPX and IWM will arrive shortly afterwards. Dire is the furthest away. But I've drawn those in on all the 15-minute charts. I'm planning to do a pre-market post tomorrow morning to get out before the open and before I do the videos. Looking at this and explaining exactly what I'm thinking here. So I'll be looking at that, and then I'm planning to have the big post, the bigger picture post out later in the day. I'm hoping no one's going to be too offended with me discussing. People are a bit sensitive about discussing American politicians at the moment. Normally, I just generally despise most politicians, really. It's and I don't really pull my punches particularly, but I don't. People too tend to get easily offended about Trump, so he's not my politician. I don't have a dog in the fight, really. It's but I'm just watching it with interest. What I'm talking about is the economic arguments, which I think really are hard to argue, although obviously I think many in the current administration are arguing the opposite, saying things like tariffs are tax cuts, but they're not tax cuts. And saying they're going to be eaten mostly by the other side, and that's not going to happen either, I don't think. So I'm basically talking about what could go wrong and how badly it could go wrong. So hopefully that won't offend too many people. But the reality is, for me to put in an objective view of what happens, I've got to be objective about it. So, I can't pretend that, night is day. All right, daily. We actually made the buy signal targets here. So we basically, on this, making this flag, we resolved all of the positive divergences, which was great. We've broken back below the daily middle band. We've got compressing bands at the moment, and that's going to restrict your opportunity to go too far down. You can see the 3SD lower band on the daily chart is above the current targets, which I've got in the 5360 on SPX to 5440 area. I think we may well be making those over the next few days, but I am wondering about this potential double bottom setup. That won't set up any divergence on the daily, but on the hourly charts, we could get positive divergence there. And we've got a nice looking potential double bottom setup on the way to these targets here. Now, if we do fail those, then then if these patterns fail, then we can go up and set up a larger double top setup, which I'd be thinking this was a big sell if we got back here, because I think there will be a lot more radical action from this administration, and I think some of that won't really be thought out, or will be a bit optimistic in terms of the likely effects. All right, but I'll be talking more about those in those posts. Keep a lookout for those. So I'll be doing those tomorrow. Okay, on the cues, we've got on the hourly charts, again, we could form some positive divergence. We're getting back, I've just drawn in these purple lines, the potential level bottoms. Do we have an obvious target here on NDX? Sorry, on the cues? Yes, we do. I've got a support trend line here. It's clear, it's nice. Very nice, actually. And it's down here in about the 448 area, but obviously this is a declining trend line. So if we go through, I'll be thinking we may well be reaching that, and I'd be looking for these targets in the 457 to 461 areas. Okay, looking at Dia, again, wouldn't be hard to form hourly positive divergence. I'm thinking of potential level bottom here. I haven't put in the purple line, but I have got, again, the obvious support trend line here. Now, this is an interesting one because, one, this could be bull flag support on a bigger picture. And it's a really nice trend line. Look at that. 1, 2, 3. That is nice. That really is nice. But to be honest, the main thing that really strikes me about it is we've got this lovely double top here, and to get to this target, which is down in the 384 area, it's going to have to get through this trend line. So I'm watching this with great interest. I've got a possible alternate trend line here, but neither of these would get it close to that target. That's a beautiful double top, really one of the nicest I've seen. And I'm leaning towards it making target, but I am looking at these support trend lines as potential trouble on the way. All right, let's have a look at IWM. IWM on the hourly chart, well, just on the daily chart, obviously, we've broken back below all the daily middle bands now. So, again, all the bands are compressing. That could restrain us to the downside. That could improve the chances of at least trying to play out on the double bottoms. So watching that with interest. On the hourly chart, again, very easy to form hourly positive divergence. We've got a very clear trend line here, and again, it is not far below. And this is a very, very nice trend line here. It's 1, 2, 3. Could well make that a 4. I think this is the obvious target. I've got that down to about the 143 area, but you can see that the head and shoulder target is a long way below it. And the head and shoulder target is actually in about the 183 area. So again, is that going to hold? That's this trend line here that I've marked in, but it's really not a bad trend line. And again, if that was tested and held, that could potentially be a bull flag setup. Now, why am I thinking about a retest of the high here? Obviously, the news has been a bit of a disaster and so on. But I would say that when you are looking at big reversals, by far the most popular pattern, large pattern, is to retest the high, set up a double top, and then fail then. I am, just because it happens so often, I'm wondering about it. And I'm seeing setups here that could favor that. So I'm following those because they could play out. And obviously, in terms of the news, Trump does seem to change his minds quite a lot. Is it possible that he might change his mind on this and delay it a month or think about it some more? Yes, he's done it before. He may do it again. All right, looking at DAX. DAX, we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed. We've made target on the RSI 5 sell signal, and we've got a lovely little double top. That double top, I'm thinking, has a good chance of making target. We've got a lot of sell signals here. I've got a weekly RSI 14 sell signal fix. Almost failed, but didn't. We've got a weak RSI 5 sell signal fixed as well last week. We've got a very nice target down here, and I've got that target in about the 21,000 area. I'm thinking that's likely to deliver. We could see another retest of the high. We could see some action on the way, but I'm thinking this double top here will probably deliver. Because at the end of the day, I think we're likely to see tariffs and a low to medium to possibly high grade trade war, depending on retaliations, happen with Europe, and that's going to take the Europeans down. And I think I've seen a discussion that where we've been, one of the reasons the Europeans have been so strong this year is we're seeing rotation from the American stocks. And the American stocks have been trading at a premium because, of course, America's been growing faster. But obviously, if America starts growing slower or gets into a severe recession, which I explained could happen, because in my post tomorrow, then at that stage, we might see the US indices drop relatively pretty heavily against the Europeans, but the chances are the Europeans would go down as well. So we'll see how that goes. Meantime, we're well below the daily middle band here. We've broken it with a conviction that we didn't see last time, really. And we're getting pretty close to double top support, which I've got at 22.3k. On Nikkei, we've got a weak RSI 14 buy signal fixed. The RSI 5 buy signal made target, which is the main one I was watching. We've had a hard fallback below the daily middle band, and I'm leaning towards seeing a retest there of this low here at 36k, especially as the Japanese really are getting involved in the war, in the trade war, because of course they produce a lot of cars. So obviously that 25% on cars is affecting them very directly. I do speculate that some of the US partners won't retaliate, but I think the main ones likely would. The Europeans are not feeling particularly loved by the Americans at the moment, for good reason, and I think would very, very likely retaliate. And because there's not much reason, normally in a trade war, they would retaliate. The talk from the White House seems to be that America is such an important market that no one's going to retaliate. I think that's very, very, very devious. I'm not expecting to see that happen before, and if it did happen, it'd be almost unprecedented in the history of trade wars. I think that's most unlikely to happen. So I think and Trump, in the expectation that is going to happen, that people will be too polite to put on reciprocal tariffs, effectively making this a tax by America on the rest of the world. I just don't think that's credible. And if it doesn't happen, he's promising that he will ramp up trade tariffs a lot. That could make the situation a lot worse. But I don't really see it's going to lead to a situation where it's not retaliated against. I just think that's very, very unlikely. I don't think the Europeans are going to wear it. The Chinese already are wearing it. And I'm pretty dubious about the Japanese wearing it either. And actually, even Britain against the US has actually a significant trade surplus with Britain. Of course, there's a lot of luxury cars made in Britain, and they've all been affected. So even the Brits might start retaliating, although they're less affected than the Europeans. We will see, and might be more timid, maybe, and more keen to stay on terms with the US, particularly, trying to hold the Ukraine negotiations together. Okay, let's move on. So let's have a look at DX. DX, we've had a lovely double bottom here, but when we started off with this double bottom, we had a very nice daily RSI 5 buy signal, and that's made target while we've been tracking sideways. I think this might be a bear flag for me, and we might just return to the low. I think it may fail. We've got some nice targets. If we did see a move, then actually the target up here in the 104.75 area is pretty close to this declining resistance trend line. Which might get hit. Is an attractive target, but that hasn't actually helped it so far. And it may be that we're going to just return to the lows. We will see. So looking at ZB, I've been calling this as a flag. I drew this obvious trend line here before we hit it. And we're heading back to resistance. I think this is a bull flag, and I think we're going to break up. Not necessarily now, but soon, over this declining resistance, and we're going to head back up and we're going to retest this high. Let's talk about how that looks on the TNX chart. Now, looking at the US dollar first. US dollar, I'm leaning towards this being an overall bull flag. If that's the case, the obvious next target on the big picture would be to come down, hit that flag support, and very possibly hit this rising support. So if they were to hit where it crosses here, which would be probably at the end of 2025, then that would be in about the 97 area. I think we may well be on here. And you can see from this very, very large chart over a huge timescale that these moves do tend to take quite a while to play out. So we will see. And what on earth is that trim line there? Never mind, I'll come back to that another day. But you can see I've drawn in the flag, I've drawn in the overall megaphone here, which I was calling, as soon as we made this high here and established this trend line, I was talking about a move here. It's taken a few years to play out, but that's not unusual on DX. Okay, we don't have any negative divergence, and we didn't because we didn't retest this high here at 114. Even then, it might have been a bit of a struggle to get it. On the weekly chart, we had a weekly RSI 5 sell signal. That's make target. I've drawn in the flag here too. The daily chart was looking for a bit of a rally here. We've been kicking around near the daily middle band. We've not really got convincingly over it, and we may be failing back into the low. If we do, I've got an open head and shoulder target, which is down here at about the 104.8 area. Sorry, 101.8 area, and that's on the way to this trend line here in the 100 area. I think this may be an oversized bear flag and is setting up a move back to retest this low here at about the 99.3 area. On the shorter term daily chart, I'm seeing a buy signal here on the daily chart on the RSI 14. It's weak, but nonetheless, it's not that weak, but it is slightly weak. And we've already made the RSI 5 one. I'm seeing obviously a fail at the daily middle band at the moment. I would have loved to see this test of this trend line here in the just slightly under 105. I'm wondering if we're going to get it. But I'd love to see it if it's still on the table. Okay, looking at the bigger picture, I'm going to be talking about the setups here. I have mentioned on a couple of bigger picture charts that I'm looking for a retest of this high here at 49.97 on TNX, and that we have a potential target up at 8. Now, this is a radical target, but I was saying there were circumstances under which I should do it, and one of those is what I'm explaining in this, is one of the points I make in this post tomorrow, that one of the reasons the US runs a large trade deficit is because it is the reserve currency, and the reserve currency tends to get bought more, it tends to be higher, and that means that you tend to run larger deficits. Now, those deficits don't necessarily matter a great deal, and it's certainly not the reason you've got a national debt. That's because of budget deficits in the US. So, but in the event that Trump gets what he wants and the US dollar goes down, and at the moment, if he does that with tariffs, then of course he alienates a lot of allies. Then at that stage, a lot of those allies might start thinking that maybe they should be keeping their reserves in other currencies. And at that stage, several $1 trillion could come out of US bonds. What could that do? Well, that could bump interest rates up. Because it has a reserve currency, in relation to the amount of debt it's got, it's actually, the interest rates are relatively low. This could bump them up to 6. And as I said, I've got a possible target at 8.1, which is a very attractive Fibonacci target. And I'm wondering if that might deliver. We will see. But I am thinking about it. Could we retrace here longer? Yes. Could we form a larger flag? Yes. Could we, in the event that starts playing out, China sells its US dollars, Europe sells its US dollars, Britain's not one of the really big players. That's got about 700 billion, I think. The fact is, one of the reasons the US has held on to the reserve currency is because it's got a lot of friends. It's in the process of not really being particularly nice to those friends, and those friends may actually decide not to hold those anymore and hold something else. In which case, that could have a huge impact on the dollar downwards and on interest rates up. So I'll be watching that carefully. In terms of the weekly chart, no current divergence. In terms of the daily chart, we had an RSI 5 buy signal. That's made target. But I'm watching. We've got this overall flag here. It's broken up. We could form a larger flag, see a move down on TNX down into maybe the 33 area, and potentially get to this possible head and shoulder neckline in the 32.5 area. That would be interesting, although it's not a head and shoulders I think has a lot of chance of forming and playing out. But if it continues to form, then obviously I'd start taking it more seriously. On the hourly chart, you can see what I'm seeing on the shorter term setup, and that is that I'm thinking that we've got a bear flag here. We've slightly overthrown the upper trend line. That would suggest we're going to return back to this low here at 41.06, and that could be completing a smaller head and shoulder pattern. I'm watching that with great interest because actually this is a very nicely formed pattern. It's really not bad. So we could see a break up, head back up to the 49.97 area, but I am wondering if we might see more downside first. And if you look at the bigger picture chart, that is a setup which could get us back down into forming a larger flag and getting down into that 34-35 area that I was talking about. We will see. All right, let's have a look at CL. Okay, CL. There's a couple of things I want to mention here. One, we're failing at the monthly pivot, but I did mention last week on Wednesday, I think, that, or maybe last Sunday, that of course that was the only monthly pivot till the end of the month. And the end of the month is tomorrow. At the close tomorrow, this disappears in a puff of smoke and a new monthly pivot is in play. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm not seeing this as a really serious resistance area at this stage. We could be forming a bull flag, but actually there's something really interesting here that I need to mention to you. And that is, this could be an inverted head and shoulders. Look at that, left shoulder. Could be forming the right shoulder. Ideal low would be in about the 68 area. And that, if that broke up, would have a target, which would be in about, what do we get down to here, 65. So that would be in a target in about the 75.4 area. And I am seeing that as a potentially doable target, which doesn't actually really change anything on the bigger picture on the daily chart. So I'll come to that. NG, I was seeing this as a flag. We've got a really nice bull flag wedge here. This could evolve into a larger flag. But I'm quite liking this heading higher. We didn't get the cold snap that had been forecast, but at the moment this is on the way back potentially to retest this high, and I've still got open targets again in the 5.75 to 6.25 area, and I'm particularly liking the 5.75 area as a target. Let's have a look at that. All right. So looking at energies, we've got, looking at oil first. Oil, we've seen a bit of a break up over this declining resistance. Doesn't necessarily have to be significant, but I am wondering about a bounce here. We are below the daily middle band, sorry, the monthly middle band, which has been holding as resistance at 76 at the moment. So that actually, if we went back up and retested that again, that would be a pretty good match with that IHS target that I was talking about. On the weekly chart, we've got a bit of positive divergence here on the monthly chart. It's weak, but nonetheless, it's interesting. On the weekly chart, no current divergence. I'm seeing this as a falling wedge setting up a retest of this low here, which is actually in the 63.57, not showing that particular low on this chart for some reason, not quite sure. But I like that, but if we see a break up over, well, the resistance trend line, which is at about, well, 76 area, then we could go higher directly. But actually, we've got all this area in between, and that's a pretty good match with the IHS target as well. So looking at the daily chart, so I've got that resistance currently here in about the 76.8 area, but falling towards 76. I am thinking we could see that break over. We've got some resistance on the way. 200 DMA is at 72.73. 50 DMA is at 70.53. So, I mean, we've got the ribbon of moving averages to get through, but it is a possibility, and it's one worth considering. Looking at the daily chart here, this is the overall wedge. It's a nice one. Could we head up to 75.4 and then come down here? Yes, that wouldn't even be that unusual. So I'm wondering, but equally, of course, we could break over declining resistance and wedge resistance. It's a nice looking wedge. I'm taking it seriously. Could we see that move within it? Yes. Am I thinking we might be forming an IHS here? Yes. So we shall see. All right, looking at natural gas. Natural gas, obviously, this is the double bottom that's broken up with a target in the 575 to 625 area. And you can see 580 is the 50% retracement of this move down from 1004 to 154. I really like this pattern. It's nice. Doesn't mean it's got to make a target, but it's nice, and it might make target. And it's the kind of move that natural gas delivers on a pretty regular basis. On weekly chart, RSI 14 buy signals reached the possible near miss target. RSI 5 sell signals reached the possible near miss target. In effect, we've got no open signals here, but we do have some support which we've just held at the 200 DMA at 397, and as long as that is holding, I'm liking the upside. Looking at the daily chart, we've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal that's fixed. It's quite old. I'm not really taking it that seriously at this stage. We do have a double top that's broken down, but that may well be just rejecting back up to the high. Watching the daily middle band, which I've got at 4.13. But as long as it gets over that, this is clear as far as I'm concerned to go back and retest 459 and potentially go higher. In terms of the double top, that could still play out, but I would say that an awful lot of reversal patterns failed just after the breakdown, and well, it kind of looks like one of those at the moment. On natural gas, on the shorter term chart, I'm just watching this trendline resistance if we get up there in about the 4.7 area. But we're a long way from that at the moment. We will see. We didn't make it down to my support trend line here, which I've got down in the 3.4 area. But if we're breaking up from the double bottom, this wasn't a bad back test of, the double bottom resistance. I'm still liking it. And a back test of the double bottom resistance isn't an unusual thing to see by any means. Okay, let's have a look at GC. Now, GC has gone higher. I've just rolled this into June, and it's still going higher still. I do have some indications which are suggesting that we might see a reversal. The smallest of those, really, is the 60-minute sell signal that's fixed. That might just get run over. But I am wondering about it. And silver, potential double top here. We've got scope for upside. 60-minute sell signal reached possible near miss target, so I'm disregarding it at this stage. HG, I think a top may be forming here. And the reason for that is that I think the US is going into recession, and the Dr. Copper is called Dr. Copper because it's very sensitive to economic activity. I think we may be forming a high. We made my retest at 5.2, and I'm thinking this may be reversing. We will see. All right, let's have a look at that on the big picture charts. Okay, gold. Right. All right, looking at gold on the daily chart. Okay, here, this is just looking at the shorter term pattern setups, because on the bigger picture, this has just gone through every trend line. So we're kind of in uncharted territory here. And I could try and work something out with log charts and whatever, but I don't think log charts are particularly appropriate to gold. And it's not somewhere I'm really looking. We've got a lot of positive negative divergence on the monthly chart, so I'm just adjusting that back again. It doesn't need to deliver, but there's a possibility if we do see some retracement on the weekly chart. I've got a possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing. It's nice. On the daily chart, I've got a possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing. This is quite a lot of negative divergence, and it's not alone. As I work through the charts, you'll see more. I have got a couple of trend lines here that might hold. This is a nice one here, and I've got possible resistance there in the 3100 area, and I've got slightly above that a possible shorter term resistance trend line, which would be quite nice. I'm going to be watching both of those tomorrow, as obviously this is the continuous chart, and now that we've rolled into June, we're probably going to find ourselves looking at the prices that we're looking at on June, which are actually already up at 31.39. So I'm going to be watching those and see if those trend lines hold tomorrow. Too early to say at the moment. Looking at silver. No current negative divergence, but we've still got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed, albeit a quite old one. I've been looking for a retest of this high here in the 34.86 area. We haven't quite seen it yet, but I think we're going to see that tomorrow. Looking at the weekly chart, we've got a possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing, just a little one. It's not this one here, it's this one here, which is divergent. I am wondering about it, and I do have a possible trendline resistance up here, just below 36, which I will be watching, and isn't a bad one. We will see how that goes, but I do have a bigger resistance trend line up in the 38 area, which is where I've been kind of assuming would be where this was heading. But if we see a reversal, then maybe it won't make it there. Looking at palladium, if we do see a reversal, I'll be wondering about a retest this low here at 808. On platinum, I've got this big triangle basically covering 2 years of it not doing a great deal. No current divergence, apart from this old RSI 14 sell signal, which didn't quite reach the possible near miss target actually, but got close. This is just chopping. On the bigger picture, this is all just chop. All right, looking at copper. Copper, we reached the retest of this high here at 504, and we've got a potential large double top here. Now, it's a bit too large to the extent that I'm not really thinking this could make target. The minimum target on a breakdown from here, if it was to make target, it would actually be in about the 1.09 area, which is here. Potentially possible, but seems kind of unlikely. We will see. But maybe. Certainly if we saw a really bad reaction to the tariffs, then it would potentially be on the cards. The Great Depression got started with tariffs with the Smoot-Hawley Act in 1930. But the difference in the Great Recession, I think, is that the rest of the world basically put up barriers against each other. Now that obviously everyone who's read about the Great Depression knows that this was likely a very significant factor, I think the Americans are putting up tariffs against everyone. Everyone probably won't put up tariffs against everyone else. I'd be surprised. It would be particularly stupid if they did. But if they didn't, then the biggest effect would be likely to be on the US. Because their trade within each individual region or country is hugely significant to the US economy, but just because they were planning to tackle them all at once. Looking at the daily chart, no current divergence here, but that could easily be fixed. Well, I've got an old RSI 14 sell signal, but we can set up some more divergence, possible RSI 5 sell signal with a retest of this high if we get one. I do have a nice rising megaphone here, which I'm watching with interest. Although I've got one of the trend lines wrong. Sorry, I drew that today. I'm just going to alter that. The support trend line isn't there. It's actually here, a lot closer. So I've got that in about the 4.85 area. If we break that, then that's going to be a significant sign that we're topping. And I've got this possible overall rising wedge, which I'm taking seriously as well. We will see how that goes. One thing that really caught my eye, though, hang on, let's do HG daily first. No current divergence. Retest the high could fix that and give us both RSI 14 and RSI 5 daily sell signals break. What really caught my eye was GDX here. GDX, we've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed. We've got an RSI 14 RSI 5 sell signal possibly brewing. It's got me wondering. We've got a potential rising megaphone here with us having just hit resistance. There's a case building here. We've got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fixed on GDXJ as well, and a possible RSI 5 sell signal brewing there too. Have we got a decent resistance trend line here? It's not bad. This could be a megaphone too. I am wondering whether we might be topping out within these, and it wouldn't take an awful lot to start fixing daily RSI 5 sell signals for a retracement. Not seeing any sign of that on the gold chart yet, but maybe. We will see. All right, great. Let's have a look at I'm just going to skip through the currencies because there's not an awful lot to say. Euro, the small double top may be failing. GBP USD, the head and shoulders have already failed with a target back up for the retest this high. But to be honest, it wasn't really moving a great deal in this direction while it was doing this. USD JPY, this tends to go up with the dollar. Wouldn't necessarily, and sometimes doesn't. I would note that we could be forming a large inverted head and shoulder pattern here. Sorry, I'll just mark that in. And that is something I'm keeping an eye on here. And you can see that it's actually pretty nice. So this could be a nice one. But if dollar's going to be falling hard, then it's going to be a bit of a struggle for this lever, because normally that would put downward pressure on this too, and it would put downward pressure also on CAD. CAD, what's happening here? Don't know. Obvious next move just by eye. Looks like a retest of this low here in the 141.5 area, but it's not really telling us a lot. Australian dollar. We had an IHS here, and it's failed with a target with a retest of the low here. Bigger picture, not really seeing a pattern here. NZUSD, not really seeing a great deal either. We will see. We've got a potential level bottom here, which is broken up and hasn't failed because these don't really fail. Could that head higher into it? Yes. If the dollar heads down hard, will it? Then yes, probably. All right, looking at KC charts. Still wondering about ABC, possible target area down to the 355 area. Sugar, this looks like a bull flag forming. Not got a great support trend line, but not bad. We will see. No current divergence here, but I'm wondering about a retest of this high here. We'll see how that goes. On CC, nice looking double bottom, has done absolutely nothing since I first started talking about this, but nothing to say that it doesn't break up. If it does break up, then we could see a move up and maybe into the 9,000 area. I wouldn't be looking really for a lot more than that. CW, we've gone back and retested this low, which I was expecting, and we've got potentially a low forming here. We've got a nice looking potential double bottom, and I'm wondering if that might deliver. On corn, I was expecting to see a retest of the low, and again, we got it. Potential double bottom here too. We will see how that goes. This trend line has wandered. So waiting to see if that delivers. But we've got potential double bottoms. I haven't got them marked in yet, but I'll have them marked in by Wednesday. But obviously it's a bit early days. But these could be reversing back up. Soy didn't make the retest of the low, and maybe it won't. So could that mean that we're forming an overall bear flag here? Yes, it could. So I'd be watching. Well, I'd be wondering about a move up to current monthly pivot area, although that won't be the monthly pivot, obviously, for much longer. No current divergence. CT, still wondering about a retest of the low, although there's not much sign of that happening at the moment. We do have a 60-minute sell signal fix, so we shall see if that delivers anything. On lumber, on my other lumber chart, and I've been stock chart has stopped covering a few things lately, and I have to say that's been making my life more complicated. On my other lumber chart, this is actually already retested the high. Waiting to see if it retests here too. Live cattle going back up into a retest of the high, hasn't quite made it yet. If we're forming a flag, we could see another leg down and then come back and retest it. On lean hogs, I'm still wondering about a possible retest of the low, but at the moment we're just chopping around in a fairly narrow area. We will see. Okay, let's have a look at coffee. On the bigger picture chart, I've been showing this monthly chart just to show that coffee is really looking pretty expensive by historical standards. Not necessarily. I mean, if I took in inflation, this isn't, wildly out of normal bounds. But I am thinking that we're likely to see a very sharp retracement, and that could be starting. Although I'd love to see a retest of this high here first. We have broken this rising support here. This is the latest pattern, and I'm thinking that may well deliver something impressive. We will see. All right, let's have a look at. Sorry, I'm just going to correct a line here. So I've got so many lines on so many charts. Sometimes I just spot an error, and it's hard to remember which one it was afterwards. But sometimes I do wonder if the prices wander around. That's the obvious trend line. This was it breaking up from the pattern, but of course this arrow I drew in was wrong. And sorry, this is important because it potentially gives us another upside target, a larger upside target on coffee that hasn't been reached yet. So bear with me a moment. Yes, I've got potentially a target in about 4.65 area. We haven't reached that yet. It's possible we'd see another leg up to do it. We will see. But that's from this rising megaphone, which usually would break down, but in this case broke up. Because it usually breaks down. We had a nice looking double top. It did look as though it really might reverse, and then off it went. But that's failing now. I'd love to see it make that target, though. We will see whether it can. But maybe it will, maybe it won't. Okay, let's have a look at that was on the weekly chart, of course. On the daily chart, this is the rising megaphone. We've broken down from it. Kind of looks like a triangle at the moment, although it's broken out both sides, so it's not a particularly nice classical triangle. But I am wondering whether this might be setting up a compression for a retest of the high, or whether this will form into a larger bull flag with a move down to the downside. We'll see. All right, sugar. Not terribly high by longer term standards, but I am wondering if this is a head and shoulders forming, and it's quite a nice one. If this was a head and shoulders forming, then we can see a move down into about the 0.09 area, which is an area which reaches regularly often historically. So we will see. I am wondering about that, and we will see how it goes. Looking at the daily chart, weak RSI 14 sell signal has already made the possible near miss target. No divergence here really. And if we were going to go up hard, I'd be thinking this could be a double bottom here with a second low at 17.52. That could potentially set up a double bottom to go higher. So that would be the alternate view, that we go back and retest this high here at 28.10. So we've got two patterns there. I'm watching with great interest, and at the moment, strong resistance is at the monthly pivot, which I've got in the 21.9 area. Looking at cocoa. Again, this, well, not quite the same, because on the bigger picture chart, this has gone way, way beyond where you would normally expect it to see. But I don't think I have the data to, let me see. Stock charts have been messing around with that lately as well. You can see that going back a very long time, we are, I know obviously, these prices don't account for inflation. So you need to bear that in mind. And this is definitely not a chance for a log chart either. But you can see that by historical standards, this has gone up an awful lot. And it's gone up quite steadily over the years, although not as much as inflation for this period here. But then suddenly it's way more than made up for it to this move up to a spike above, basically almost, well, over triple the historical high, which was in 2011. So this is a very big high. I'm wondering whether we might see a big move down. This could be a double top forming, and we will see. But bigger picture, RSI 5 buy signal fixed, RSI 14 buy signal fixed. I'm expecting to see a rally here, and I'm expecting it to get over the daily middle band, which has been resistant for the next few days, and that's why it hasn't been doing a great deal. Looking at wheat, we're not at highs by historical standards. I think this might be going down it's one of the trade war victims potentially, and it's not really as protected. Well, the crops are much larger, obviously, than things like coffee or cocoa, and this is much more subject to the trade wars. I am wondering if this might be going down on the bigger picture, but I'm quite liking the setup for a bottom at the moment, which isn't bad. Looking at corn, we've got historical standards again, not high. Again, same comments really as I would give to wheat. We've got a potential support trend line here, which is held, and I'm wondering if we might head up directly from there. Watching that with interest. If that breaks, that's going to look significantly bearish. Looking at soybeans, again, middle of the road in terms of the long term. I am wondering whether we might be, well, we've broken up over this declining resistance. It's a nice move. We've back tested it very nicely. This looks as though it's got legs. I am wondering if we're just forming a bear flag, get up to the 1050 area maybe, and then go back and retest the lows, but it's certainly giving it the benefit of the doubt. And there is a potential that we're forming a down-sloping inverted head and shoulders here, so I'm watching that with interest. Cotton, my charts are difficult at the moment. This is my monthly chart, which looks an awful lot better than my daily chart, because this is one of the ones where I've really been hamstrung by the shorter-term charts, the front month charts being supported by stock charts. I haven't found a replacement yet. I have no confidence in this current chart. Lumber, not high by historical standards, but historical standards were heavily affected by the COVID move, and really before then we're more or less at the highs of where it used to get. Lumber again is very, very sensitive to economic activity. I think we're likely to see a recession starting soon, and I'm wondering whether we might be heading down heavily. I'd be wondering about a retest of the high here. We could retest this high. Is that the reason? No, it isn't. I mean, this high was only in March, and we've already retested that. We're not seeing that on my lumber chart, which is odd. So we've got a potential level top here already. Watching that with interest, but again, I'll be working on the cotton and lumber charts to see if I can find a better alternatives. But at the moment, I'm working with what I've got. All right, great. In that case, that's a wrap. Just want to show you something last, and that is Bitcoin. Bitcoin. We had mirror flags here. They weren't quite the same, but I mean, they were maybe rhyming more than matching entirely. But we had a nice looking bear flag here, but we've still got these targets down the 69.70 area. I'm expecting these targets to be made, just as really I'm expecting the targets on downside targets on the existing patterns, certainly on SPX and NDX to get made. The other ones, maybe not. But this, I've got a trend line here, but this is suggesting that we could reach it sometime next month. And we could see a big low there if we don't see a crash in the markets, and we're just looking at a bear market with big lows and highs and big bounces and so on. I am concerned, and I'll be talking about that in my post tomorrow, that things might go bad, very badly, over the next few months, and that is the potential crash scenario I've got on equities. We will see. But this is mirror. We've broken down from here, but again, we haven't made the obvious target, which is a retest this low here at 76.6. More downside is likely, so we shall see. All right, great. In that case, that's a wrap. I'll have this posted ASAP, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow.